Thank you, Commissioner Parham. Commissioner Parham, how's the volume? Okay.
Volume is pretty good. Volume's clear.
That part we need more. Hold on. Can you say that again, please?
The volume is very clear.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We have a different setup in the room this evening.
I see. It's kind of like that 360 effect, you know, when you're watching football.
Yes. Yeah, that's how we're going to put it. It's football season, grown up and in camera. All right, well, welcome to Police Commission meeting for September 12th, 2024. We will begin by reviewing the agenda. I'm assuming everybody's had a chance to take a peek at it, and unless there were any strenuous objections, we will move forward with what's on the agenda. For the previous meeting recap, we got to meet several of our new commissioners, and we did some work on the strikes and labor disputes policy, which will be tabled because there is a lot more work that needs to be done on that, and it sounds like that one will come back to us in about 3 months. Moving to the minutes from the July 2024 meeting. Thank you, Sean. Moving to the minutes from our meeting in July, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. Any second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Thorson. All in favor of approving the minutes from July 2020? Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Rady.
Yes. I would like my remarks on the page 5. If you would strike the last sentence, I'd be more comfortable with it. I don't think that's quite what I said, and it's pretty inane.
Page 5, you said?
He felt it was fundamental to a police department to have newer, younger officers.
I'm fine with that.
You have a different page 5 than I do. Or double sided. Oh, okay. I was looking at 5. Thank you.
It's under the chief's report section.
Thank you. Since we're doing that, then I would also like to make one addition on page 3. Close to the top, Chair Hawkins said she knew that she was allowed to do that. I would prefer that say that Chair Hawkins said she knew the chair was allowed to do that.
Hmm.
Do I need to get a second on?
No, I'll take it as a friendly amendment.
Thank you. Any other comments on the minutes from July? Page 6, there was just one tiny thing. The Oregon Physical Agility Test, I believe that refers to the state of Oregon, Chief?
Yes, it's commonly referred to as ORPAT, but yes, it's the state's physical agility test.
Yeah. Is that also a friendly amendment?
Yeah, there's a scrivener's error there as well, where it says Oregon rather than Oregon. But for scrivener's errors, we can just email about it.
Excellent, thank you. And then do we move to approve as with recommended amendments?
Yeah.
All right. So then I move to approve the minutes with the recommended amendments. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Shivers. And all in favor of approving the minutes with the suggested edits, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, please say nay. And any abstentions?
Aye.
Thank you. And welcome.
Thank you.
Is that enough for you to get the count of who we have for items?
Yeah, because I have you guys all written down here.
Nice. All right, so we will welcome our new liaisons. One of them is not so new to us. Commissioner Dr. Booker has been officially appointed by City Council as the liaison from the Human Rights Commission. And then with us in the room, we welcome Clay Neal, who is our new Judge Lyman. Now that Judge Lyman moved over to the other side with us. So Clay, I would actually like to start with you. We probably won't go around and do huge introductions today, but tell us about you and about why you wanted to become the CRB liaison to Police Commission.
Sure. Well, I've been serving on the CRB for 3 years, and so this is my second term starting this year. And we do a rotation of liaison duties. So one of the things is just asking who is ready to be part of the Police Commission. And since Alan's stepping down from that role on the CRB into the Police Commission, we had an opening for that. So it's sort of a process. I was happy to do it, but sort of a voting of our fellow members on the CRB. Before that, I was born and raised in Eugene and then moved away for a while, came back for grad school. But while I was away, I worked in public policy in Portland and in the mayor's office and in the chief's office in the police bureau. So I will often say police bureau
You
on
will.
accident.
You will. And we can give him grief about it
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we're not a hero. Which
so I-
chief did you work for, Clay?
Reese.
Oh, Mike Reese.
Yeah, exactly. And my primary role in the mayor's office was just as a liaison to the police bureau, and then overseeing public safety initiatives otherwise that we had. And during that time, we were investigated by the Department of Justice for policies and practices that they thought might not be what our community wanted and might violate the law. So that became my primary work in the mayor's office and in the police bureau, sort of negotiating that agreement with the Department of Justice and overseeing and helping to implement reforms in the police bureau that we all thought would lead to a better community safety organization. I left that career and became an architect, and so now I'm an architect and really had nothing to do with police policy in my job, but it's still something that I care about and that I've been involved in. And so when I was thinking about ways to volunteer for the city, I was thinking about planning commission because it's related to architecture, but then also police stuff. And so CRB came up as an opportunity, and I thought working city council let me try. So that's great. That's me in a nutshell, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. We
Nice,
are
happy to be
so
here.
fortunate to have you. We can move from that into liaison reports, so don't get out of the hot seat. Commissioner Neal, how was Civilian Review Board?
We haven't met for a while, and we were supposed to meet on Tuesday, but as I mentioned, I came back from a 20-hour flight on Tuesday and arrived at 1 a.m. Didn't have a lot of sleep, and so I didn't attend our Tuesday meeting. But it was essentially the big news is that our auditor is leaving the position, and so it was mostly a meeting to celebrate her work over the past many years and say goodbye. So that's the big news. It's there's a vacancy in that position, and I guess we'll hear a little bit more about that maybe from Councilor Ye later, potentially, or from the chief.
We kicked it around. It
Yeah,
turns out that
exactly.
the
Yeah,
chief was
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
fill
That's
us in.
great. Yeah. And we hadn't met for a couple of months over the summer, but so there's no other major updates except that one, which is
Okay.
pretty major. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
Commissioner Dr. Booker, are you able to provide us a liaison report for Human Rights Commission? And I understand you also attended CRB as well.
Yes, I have no updates for CRB. Currently reviewing how my role is going to be with engaging with CRB from the human rights perspective. For as the Human Rights Commission, we still have the same request, which is a prioritized work plan items for the Police Commission so that the Human Rights Commission could offer support and collaboration. We also wanted to, the Homeless Poverty Work Group would like to share the unsanctioned posting protocols with the Police Commission for them to review and consider procedural changes for the police protocols when engaging with encampments and coordination with social service organization in accordance with ORS 195.505. And also the Human Rights Commission will be working on a proposal protocol impacting victims of hate crimes with a focus on the Black community. And the Human Rights Commission wanted information on the police department's impact on the Rights Assistance Program, from being a direct service model to a pass-through from the Department of Justice. And then also we wanted to know updates on the cultural audit for EPD. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Booker. From that, we'll go into commissioner comments. And when you give your commissioner comments this evening, please begin with your name for the sake of Commissioner Neal, who is brand new to our group. I'm going to start with Vice Chair Shivers.
Name's Sean Shivers. Nice to meet you. I don't have any comments right now. Hope everybody enjoyed their break.
Dr. Booker.
Oh, yes. Dr. Booker, hope everyone had a chance to read through the data review that was presented to us from the Police Commission, and hope that we could formulate a subcommittee that would be able to go through that review and that data that was provided, given that we didn't have enough time to actually talk about it in this particular meeting. But I definitely think it warrants a subcommittee for us to be able to go through all the data that was provided and for further warrants a cultural audit within EPD. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Zelenka has not joined us yet. Councilor Ye, I just realized I forgot to include the city council liaison report. Would you like to liaise, please?
Well, it sounds like the chief is gonna be doing my liaising because he has more up-to-date information. But my name's Jennifer Ye. I'm one of the 2 city councilors on this commission. I think I've met most people except for Clay, so, and I do not have anything to share.
Thank you. Commissioner Parham.
Commissioner comments at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Neal.
My name is Clay Neal, as I mentioned earlier, so it's nice to meet all you.
It hasn't changed?
Yeah, not yet.
All right. Commissioner Price.
Hello, I'm JC Price. Nice to meet you. Welcome, and no comments at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Folks.
Hello, my name is Amelia Folks. I have no comments at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Rady, I know you've always got comments.
Gotcha. Jack Grady, no comments at this time, but I'll probably have some later.
All right. Commissioner Thorson.
Hi, I'm Tina Thorson. Nice to meet you. I have no comments for this time.
And I'm Jensina Hawkins, Chair, and also no commissioner comments at this time. Look at us blowing through our agenda. This is great.
I'm a chopped liver.
I worked you off and I didn't even look at you. I am so sorry, Commissioner Lyman.
I'm Commissioner Chopper, no. I'm sorry, I could have done that more delicately. I was not.
No need.
I was not offended. Alan Lyman, I will make a comment. I want to welcome Clay Neal. It's a real wealth of, he's really good. He understands this stuff. He looks at policy like policy. So we do a lot of policy work, and your expertise is really welcome. And I was really happy to hear that you were drafted, if you were drafted, volunteered, if you volunteered. I see the auditor is on, or the soon to be former auditor is on the Zoom if she's listening. I just want to thank her for her service, and I was upset I was not able to attend her going away, but that's also, I believe, a little blow or a loss to the city, and looking forward to hear what's going to be done. And then the last thing is I'm hoping that when we hear from the chief, we hear a little bit about what the impact of the recriminalization of the hard drugs is. So I imagine you would talk to us about that. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lyman. All right, then. we'll move right into the chief's report. And look, we all went so fast, you've got lots of extra time.
Well, I'm gonna be equally as fast because both Leah and Cindy have a fairly comprehensive annual report to share with you. So, and that always ends up with lots of good questions as a result of that. So my name's Chris Skinner. Clay, nice to meet you. Been the chief here for a little over 6 years, starting my 34th year in law enforcement. So in several different agencies and been chief in 2 different states. So I've got a sense of kind of how it's been done in some different areas as well. Actually worked in Hillsborough as a deputy chief when Portland was going through their DOJ investigation resulting in that consent decree. So we often found ourselves building policy as a result of some things that we saw from our neighboring agencies. And so we were kind of in the same space at the same time back in the day. So couple of quick things on Chief's report, and then I will address House Bill 4002. And that's what that is, to your point. I'm going to try and shift your vernacular away from ballot measure 110 to House Bill 4002, because that's what governs us now. But before I do that, a couple of things. We are with council back in session. Things feel like we're getting busy again. You know, like anybody else, the summer months have a tendency to slow down a little bit. Lots of vacations, lots of people stepping away, and we're gearing up. We're in the midst of football season, which is a difficult time for the police department in the sense that it takes a lot of overtime to run those events, and so it competes with everything else that we do. And we're mindful of having a tired workforce. We're very encouraged though, because we're on pace to be fully staffed and dispatched by the end of the year. We've had some really good recruitment efforts. We've got several people in background now, and so all things, if they line up the way we think they're going to line up, our dispatchers will be fully staffed by the end of the year. Police recruiting continues to be ongoing. We have a selection process that starts on the 21st of this month with the physical agility test, the written test, the physical agility test, and then subsequent interviews for people that pass that. And it hasn't quite closed yet, but as of today, we're roughly at about 120 or 130 applicants. And so it's very robust. So we're on the upward trend on recruiting in a lot of different areas. And so we're really hopeful that we'll be able to continue to hire police officers and certainly hire dispatchers, because they need that help. So so that's very encouraging. House Bill 4002 is what has been kind of affectionately named as the House bill that kind of recriminalized drugs or rolled back the original ballot measure 110. But the interesting thing of House Bill 4002, there's a lot of different pieces to that that are in play. And so what it essentially has done, just for awareness, is it has recriminalized the possession of controlled substance to an unclassified misdemeanor. In the state of Oregon, we have misdemeanors A, B, and C, and then we have an unclassified misdemeanor, and then we have A, B, and C felonies. And this is an unclassified misdemeanor, which is technically an arrestable offense. And so what is happening, or what's not happening yet, which we don't know because we've only been in this space for 12 days. And so time will tell on kind of the volume of cases that we see. But concurrently to House Bill 4002 taking effect September 1st, there have been a few drug arrests since then, probable cause drug arrests since then. But what's also happening concurrent to that is the deflection program is being built. The RFP has been written. I do not know if the county has sent out the RFP for our peer navigators for deflection yet. That's completely, that ball is in their court to be able to do that. But we're hoping to have the deflection program available with peer navigators in early October to be able to do that. And in the meantime, when we come across people that are in possession of controlled substance, we have a couple of different paths that we can take. One is certainly the traditional custody path, where we take somebody into physical custody if it warrants. More likely than not, the path that we'll take, based on my experience, is the citation in lieu of custody, which is also a criminal citation. So at the back end of that, it's still an arrest on somebody's record. The court still sees it as an arrest, but they're not taken into physical custody, and they're just cited and left in place or left there And we, in both instances, we gather probable cause, we'll write good reports, we'll write good PC affidavits, probable cause affidavits. We'll seize evidence where we need to seize evidence. We'll have evidence tested where we need to have evidence tested to be able to build that case and submit all of that to the DA's office for prosecution. All of these cases will go to the DA's office for prosecution, not municipal court, which is generally where all of our other misdemeanors go, is municipal court. This goes to the district attorney's office. In the event that we have a situation where we have possession of a controlled substance and some other criminal activity, lower level criminal activity, that will make that eligible for deflection when it comes up. Lower level criminal activity might include things like criminal trespass 2 and disorderly conduct, and maybe some lower level thefts that we see very, very closely tied with people that are suffering from substance abuse disorder. We often see both of those things existing. And so it makes a lot of sense to bundle that together and to actually offer some, where appropriate, some deflection for that individual if they so choose. And that's really the cornerstone of the deflection program. There's a few things in there that are criteria that would make you eligible for deflection. And I've got that list and I haven't memorized it, but there's a list. But the cornerstone of deflection is that it has to be voluntary. The individual has to choose to want to go into deflection. So it'll be interesting to see as we move down this path and we engage people that are in possession of controlled substance that we get into this space, if they choose to go down that path. What we have found, history has shown us, many people choose not to go down that path. We see that like with community court. The municipal court offers community court and a different alternative path. It's more of like a diversion because they've been arrested for and don't get that. Deflection and diversion are two different things. Diversion is post-justice system and deflection is designed to preempt the justice system. But many people that have been offered community court that have been arrested for low-level crimes that are eligible for community court have chosen not to engage in that and just are willing to kind of take their, for lack of a better term, kind of take their lumps in the criminal justice system and not do the work that it would take to go into community court. So it'll be interesting to see how many people choose to go through deflection. And that will be the job of the county and the district attorney's office to be able to have a deflection coordinator that will monitor all these people, make sure they're doing what they said that they wanted to do in deflection. And then ultimately, if they choose not to go through deflection or reoffend, then the DA's office, it's their responsibility through that traditional justice system to hold those offenders accountable and to be able to be able to do that. So to your point, Judge, we don't know yet. It's really early in this. Like I said, we've only made a handful of arrests for simple possession right now. As you can imagine, we get lots of calls because people are aware that this is now illegal. And for several years, they've been anxious to have a way to do something about some of the open air drug use that they witness happening. So we try to get to those calls as quickly as we can, but like everything else, it competes with everything else that's going on in a city of 180,000 people. And so we don't necessarily get there as quickly as we'd like. And at the end of that, we have to build probable cause. So we can't just take somebody's word for it that they saw them using drugs. We need to actually have some evidence to suggest that they're in possession of a controlled substance. And so that's frustrating for people because a lot of people just wish that we take their word for it and then remove that person. That's just not the way that works. So we're committed to making sure we do good investigations, write good reports, and have a really good solid chain of evidence when it comes to these cases, so that if in fact they have to be prosecuted by the DA's office, district attorney's office, that they have what they need. So I'm happy to answer a couple of questions around House Bill 4002 if you have something specific on your mind.
Vice Chair.
A few, maybe 6 months ago, we got the call response priority list from I don't remember who the person was.
Sure, I know right where you're going with this.
Yeah, I was just wondering where on that priority list are these drugs?
You know, we have, I don't know the answer to that.
I'm fine with an email if you.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, where we have done that. So much of it is prioritized based on what other complementary information we have. It's not just simple possession. If it's simple possession and it might elevate that, but I can find out where we're trying to do that. What I will tell you is that I've asked to, I know this community is hurting and I know this community is asking us to do something. And so I don't want to overly prioritize it, but I certainly don't want it to be a priority 9 call either. So I'll get that answer for you, Sean. I'm happy to do it.
Dr. Booker has a question.
Thank you, Holly. Dr. Booker?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Chief, for the explaining the House Bill 402. I was asked by Clint Riley, who is the I guess managing director for this, program director for this. I was asked by him to partner with him on this initial forming of this particular committee. So I've been working close with him at these meetings and actually attending every meeting that's been conducted since the forming of the committee, deflection committee meeting. There's still a lot of ongoing issues that are still being debated and discussed. One is cultural competency and fairness is still being discussed. There's also, and I've had a meeting with the DA, one of the DAs, as to the list of qualifications that would qualify a person to go to deflection. One of the issues that we see, or a couple issues, is as it relates to unfairness and arrests, and with the reference to Measure 11, where 80% of the arrests and convictions were Black people. Another issue is the person has to choose, but are the suspects educated on choice? And then issue two, ultimately, yes, the suspect has the choice, but ultimately it's up to the officer's discretion who goes to deflection and who goes to jail. And again, given what happened under Measure 11, and Measure 11 is still in effect, racial and cultural disparities is still a much needed topic and issue that has to be addressed within APD. It's also being heavily discussed within the deflection program meetings, especially with the grant money that has already been awarded, and the training of EPD officers on cultural competency and cultural awareness, and then just their overall interaction when it pertains to how they view criminality amongst Black people, and their approach to Black people upon arrest, or when Black people call the police. So there's still a lot of training that needs to go on as it pertains to EPD and the officers and the relationship the EPD has with the Black population. So it's still a lot that's being discussed at those meetings, and we'll continue to be ongoing with those meetings. I'll continue to keep attending those meetings as I was asked and recruited by retired officer Clint Riley, who's been on an exceptional job of being a listener and understanding the concerns we have in the Black community as it pertains to the police department. And I'll be willing to keep updating the commission here and the Human Rights Commission as those meetings go on. So I would just like to make that known. And then what was one other thing? I think that's it for now. Oh, Chief, question. You know my question with the recruitment. Any Black officers in that current hiring process?
I don't know yet because I don't get to see applications until they pass. They don't come to me until after they go through and show up. We have to wait and see who shows up for ORPAT and does that. But I can certainly, on the 21st of September is when they are doing their thing, and it's an all weekend long thing. I'm happy to reach out and ask for people to give me their best guess on the demographics.
All right, thank you, Chief. And thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Dr. Booker. Commissioner Parham, I saw your hand up at one time, but then it went back down.
Yeah, no questions or comments at this time.
Any other questions for the chief? Commissioner Neal.
Yeah, just a clarifying question. So I think I heard two different things, one from Commissioner Booker and one from the chief, about how deflection happens, like the point of inflection of where that happens. Maybe I just didn't parse it appropriately. So the officer can choose in the moment either to arrest or to fine in lieu of an arrest, and then or to cite in lieu of an arrest. But then the deflection choice happens in the county by the DA, or
no? The way operationally, the way this will look will be officer is in the field and has contact with an individual that they've developed probable cause to believe is in possession of controlled substance. which is an unclassified misdemeanor, and maybe have some other complementary criminal charges, but let's just talk about simple possession. At that point, there is a criteria that DA Perosa has shared with us that would be a checklist for officers to say, basically, if this, then this. If they meet the criteria, then we would offer deflection to that individual if they meet that criteria. And then ultimately, deflection could be there as long as the person chose saying, yes, I would like deflection. It's my expectation that if they meet the criteria, unless there's some extenuating set of circumstances, but the criteria has got pretty clear where, for instance, somebody that we're coming into contact with on a low-level possession is being violent, has violent behavior, or is already in the criminal justice system for a violent criminal act. Those types of things might be disqualifiers. But generally speaking, what I've seen, it's pretty broad, especially when I think about the clientele that we may have here in the city of Eugene. It's pretty broad to suggest that deflection will be offered a lot. I can't say in every case, but it'll be offered a lot. And so it'll be my role to make sure that my organization understands the expectations that deflection is going to be a first right of refusal before we think about issuing a citation for a criminal offense and or taking somebody into custody. I don't see a ton of custody arrests in this particular case, just based on the history of what we've chosen to do. We try to be mindful of jail space. We try to be mindful of taking somebody into custody, and then we're not only in charge of their person, we're in charge of their property. That can be challenging for us from time to time. And so leaving somebody there with a criminal citation makes more sense. But it's my hope that we just, I hate to say this, but I think we're going to flood the deflection program, or potentially we could flood the deflection program. And I hope they have the capacity to be able to do this. The last thing that I'll say, which is more of an editorial comment though, that I've always said, and this shouldn't be a shock to you, is that none of this is going to work until this state and this county decides to invest in on-demand treatment services. Because the whole point of this is to try and get people less addicted to substances, which I think creates a safer community and lowers crime rate. If we don't have on-demand treatment services for these people, then deflection is going to be challenging. That doesn't mean we're not going to try it. That doesn't mean we're not going to try and leverage our community partners that we have to be able to get services to people. But we live in a state that ranks dead last in the country in mental health and addiction services investment. And so when we think about investment from the state, they gave us $2.1 million to stand up deflection. When you think about the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been allocated during the ballot measure 110 days, I'm hopeful that we'll think about how we invest some of that money into on-demand treatment so we can actually see deflection work across the state.
Vice Chair.
I have two questions. One, can we just for our information, get a copy of that checklist by email? And then the second one is looking at and taking Commissioner Booker's comments to heart. What's the data tracking on disparate or, because this is up to officer discretion, what's the data tracking like on who offers deflection and who doesn't, and if there's any disparate outcomes there?
All of that information, I mean, all of our arrest data is tracked anyway. I mean, this is no different. Arrest data would be tracked. Right now we have the stops data, which is designed to do exactly that as it pertains to traffic stops and person stops, because that's some of the most discretionary things that we do when we officers decide who they're going to pull over and who they want to stop and talk to. That's where we want to make sure that we're paying attention to any kind of disparate treatment that might be going on. In this particular case, it's a combination of two things. It could be a self-initiated activity by an officer, but more likely than not, it's responding to a call for service. So it's what will be important to track is not necessarily why we had contact with that person, because it sometimes is generated by somebody else, but what's the outcome of that particular call? And so all of that arrest data can be tracked, and we can pay attention to that. And my sense is that we will, with even with some of our other stuff, we will be able to, with a body of data, be able to go in and take a look and see if they're disproportionately making arrests or disproportionately offering deflection versus not to different groups. And so I think that's an important and reliable piece of this program that we need to do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Chief, can you go back for me on the cited in lieu of custody?
Mhm.
So it's where they are cited and it counts as arrest in the system? So then when they are encountered, when they have an encounter with an officer and later on, it shows that, does it show that they were arrested?
It's not that instantaneous because that citation has to be entered into the system at some point. So you could get multiple citations and arrested or cited in lieu of custody a couple of different times over the course of a night, and those things wouldn't show up together until they get in the system. But it's essentially it's like getting a traffic citation. If you've ever got one of those, I can't suppose you've ever been caught speeding, Chair
Not
Hawkins,
me,
but if you have,
never.
and you got a traffic citation, it looks
Not
very
my
much,
DPD.
it looks very much like that. It just has a criminal nexus to it, and the court date actually sends you to circuit court at the DA's office and not municipal court. So yeah, we could very well arrest the same person twice in the same day and not know it. And that's just that's the weakness of the system. It doesn't matter whether it was a physical custody or a citation in lieu of custody. That's just a limitation of the system. That's not a real-time system.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner?
Yes, Commissioner Lyman.
Thank you. Yeah, Chief, has it changed? Like, so, if someone goes to jail on an unclassified misdemeanor, I know it's not your, you're not responsible, but wouldn't it, as a community, shouldn't we expect that if that's it, if they're going in not on a city bed, but on a state charge for an unclassified misdemeanor, wouldn't the expectation be that that person is not going to spend very long in the Lane County Jail, like until the judge is there, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I think there'll be many instances where it's just a book and release situation.
Right, through the door.
Through the door type of thing, which to your point, that's why we don't do a lot of those, because it's expensive. It doesn't serve a purpose in every case. Now, having said that, there are instances where removing somebody from that environment is important, if there's like a complementary safety piece or something like that. But citations in lieu of custody seem to happen much more frequently than we're taking somebody in custody, and the logistics around taking somebody into custody. Many people, like I said, our unhoused community, unfortunately, is challenging in the sense that we need to be responsible. If we're going to take custody of the individual, we also are responsible for their stuff, and sometimes it makes more sense to cite and leave them in place if it's still and they're in a safe place, not creating a safety issue for others. Citing in lieu of custody makes a lot of sense.
And just to the chair's question and your answer, it is like a traffic ticket, but it has a mandatory appearance box checked, and failure to appear on that ticket results in a warrant for your arrest, versus when you don't show up for a traffic ticket, you get a default judgment and
suspension or something.
Yeah, but so even though it's just it's used a lot for the very reasons that the chief just said, and it makes a lot of sense. So.
Thank you. Any other questions for the chief? Oh, of course, Commissioner Reedy.
Gotta start sometime. No, when I did my ride-alongs, when there was an arrest, I noticed it took an officer off the street for better than an hour. So I would think that would be another reason why a cite and release, when the person is really not going to go to jail. It makes more sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And oftentimes our sergeants, I ask them to be first line supervisors. My expectation is they're kind of managing those resources and not trying to tie officers up. I mean, you're right, going to the jail takes some time. Many times somebody that's going to jail has a pre-existing condition. The jail is requiring us to take to Riverbend to get a medical release first. That we could sit on the wall. We call it wall time. You can sit on the wall over at Riverbend for a very low level medical release for a couple of hours. It just doesn't make a ton of sense. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that there aren't instances where removing them is the best thing for our community at the time. But the vast majority of these those things are taken into consideration.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Leah Pitcher. We are moving into the independent police auditors.
Did we want to do the subcommittee update first?
Oh, I skipped right over that. Yes, we do want to do the subcommittee update, and I suppose that would actually be me, because I forgot to ask Commissioner Parham to do it. So the subcommittee, Law Enforcement, Mental Health and Wellness Subcommittee met last week. And we welcomed 2 new commissioners to our subcommittee, J.C. Price and Jack Reedy. So we spent a lot of time going over the review of how the subcommittee was approved by City Council and our mission, what we hope to accomplish with the next year that we have left of our time that City Council granted us. And we received a really great information from Emily McCauley, the supervisor for peer support and resiliency team, with a ton of information that she provided about the resources that EPD is already providing to officers and dispatchers and I think all of the employees. Chief, are there any employees that are not able to benefit from PSER?
It's available to everybody, to include spouses and family members.
That's right, spouses and family members, yes. Also for the subcommittee, because I am now the chair of the police commission, I am actually stepping down as the subcommittee chair. I have asked and Commissioner Parham has agreed to step up to chair the subcommittee. Do I need to get a vote on that?
I don't think you need one,
Our
but
bylaws just said that I could appoint pending approval from.
yeah, and so I move to approve.
Thank you. Can I get a second
Good job, Sean.
to approve Commissioner Parham as chair of the subcommittee? Thank you, Dr. Booker. And then we'll move to vote. All in favor of Commissioner Parham being the chair of the Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Subcommittee, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. And any abstentions? Commissioner Parham, are you abstaining?
Yes.
Okay, that's fair. All right, well, it looks to me like you have been voted in, sir. So welcome and thank you for stepping up into that position.
Thank you.
And I have a backseat when you get a chance.
Real far back seat, chief. Commissioner Parham, was there anything else that I missed on that subcommittee update?
No, not to my knowledge. I think the big part of what we were just talking about is next steps going forward and really trying to work on helping to get a formal policy set up for critical incident evaluations.
Thank you. Chief?
I'm sorry, I promised that I was gonna go over this in my chief's report, stealing Councilor Yea's thunder from a council. As you know, Leah Pitcher is going to be taking a job in the Colorado area, still working in police policy matters. So I think she's still doing the stuff that she's really gifted at doing. I'll personally miss Leah just because we've developed a good working relationship. We don't always see eye to eye. We have the ability to be respectfully and disagree with one another, but I think we both mutually respect each other's role in the grand scheme of public safety and accountability. And so I'll miss her. I'll miss the fact that it's more than just a chief and an auditor's relationship. We're both parents, and so we often connect over raising kids and those types of things. And so I wish her all the best as she moves forward. And she's going to be amazing in Denver. To that point, this last Monday, council approved the former auditor, her predecessor, Mark Gisner, coming back for a period of time to bridge the gap between Leah's departure and when council is able to hire their employee. And as you know, council has 3 employees. The auditor is one of them. City manager and the municipal court judge are the other 2. So right now, the city is starting to have some preliminary conversations about an executive search for that. They have reached an agreement with Mr. Gisner to come back effective tomorrow at 5:01 p.m. He will be the auditor, the interim auditor. Mark and I have connected, and so we'll be able to get him connected with things he needs to be connected with, and he'll be likely working from a distance for a little while as he kind of pulls together some arrangements, living arrangements, and some of the logistics of getting him here from Florida back to Eugene. So Personally, I thank Mark took the job because he loves to ski and he wants to be here during ski season. We're happy that we have a person that we know that knows the system, knows Eugene, knows the culture, understands accountability, and has done this work in a meaningful way for a number of years for the city of Eugene and for this community. We're happy to have him back for the next, hopefully anywhere from 4 to 6 months until we get a new auditor. So that's what I know. And Councilor Ye, if I missed something, please jump in.
I think you're good.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. So the issue statement for the report that Leah Pitcher and Cindy Coleman will be reporting is the Police Commission traditionally has invited the Office of Professional Standards to share the internal affairs report, which includes the Office of Professional Standards Policy Development and Quality Control, and complements the police auditor's annual report. Per Eugene City Code, the Police Commission shall receive periodic update reports from the police auditor regarding complaint trends that the auditor believes indicate a review of police practices or training methods may be warranted. Leah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It was a whole lot of auditor talk for a police commission, but thank you.
Please hold your questions until after both Leah and Cindy have finished, and raise, so I can't see some of you, so like wave your arm really high for me to know if you have a question. Thank you. All right, now for real this time.
Okay, I'm looking forward to the big wave your hands in the air. I want to just thank you all. I'm having an echo. Are you guys having an echo? Nope. Just okay. I'll just move on. First, I want to just thank this group for always being so receptive and welcoming and communicative about questions, needs around the auditor's office and complaint process in Eugene. And I also want to apologize because I just have a whole lot going on with my family tonight. And so I'm going to tee up my amazing team of Lindsay and Rob, who Mark is very fortunate to inherit from me. And I've told him that a lot. But just real quickly, I'm going to do a short intro and then ask Lindsay and Rob to kind of take the wheel on the presentation of our report. I'm going to stay in with my earbud in for questions, but I'm sorry, I need to be a parent tonight. So this is my 14th year in the auditor's office. It's my 14th annual report. When I think about the ones that I pulled together when I first started and this one, I am so proud and impressed at how our reporting has improved and yeah, to become more clear over the years. I credit my team a lot for that. They're amazing to work with. And I think we try to remain consistent so you can see through the years how things move. But we also have been innovative in how we change how we report our statistics. One last bit, and then I'll stop talking, Lindsay, because I know you and I talked about this earlier, but so basically, just real quick, Cindy and I internal affairs in our office share the same database. We all have the same level of access to it. And so we all have the same statistics that we're reporting out on. We often report them out in slightly different ways or use slightly different words, which can cause confusion. So this year we're trying to do something where, and also frankly, our office's report was done when we still had a fair number of cases pending, which have all since, I believe, all since closed. So just to bar any confusion, we'd elected to focus on the auditor's role and the complaint process and civilian oversight in Eugene for our part of the presentation. And then we're going to let Cindy take the lead so ably on stats as she does. So with that, I'm going to just cut my camera and let Lindsay and Rob take the lead. And as I said, I'll stay in audio wise, but thank you for your understanding.
So hi, everyone. I've had the chance to meet most of you in person, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lindsay Foltz. I am the Associate Police Auditor here at the City of Eugene. Rob, do you want to introduce yourself real quick and then you can kick it back to me?
Sure. Lindsay and I are both Associate Police Auditors. We started in January 2022 and worked for Leah since then.
Yeah, we did. We started like the same day. So the great thing about doing civilian oversight stuff in Eugene is that we've got kind of multiple prongs to this system. We have the more proactive, policy-oriented side that you all work on. And thank you for your service for helping to make that robust, where you're advisory to the chief on policy. And then you have the auditor system, which is really more reactive, that handles the intake of complaints. So I'm just going to go over kind of the main highlights of the things that we do. Happy to answer any questions. Essentially, we're the singular intake point for the city of Eugene if people have complaints about EPD employees. So those can come to us in many ways. Some people reach out to us directly by phone, by email. We have an online portal where people can submit complaints either with their information or anonymously. We also receive complaints that come in through EPD, whether those are internally generated or if an officer encounters someone in the course of doing their job who has a complaint, those complaints also make their way back to our office. So one of the powers that the office has is to classify complaints. So not only do we see all the complaints and act as like this, the kind of funnel through which all complaints come in, we also classify the complaints in terms of what kind of resolution process is the most appropriate. So as you can imagine, we get a wide variety of different kinds of complaints, ranging from no misconduct at all to very serious misconduct. And so we get to determine, after doing a robust preliminary review, which classification makes the most sense for the complaint. The preliminary review, just to give you a little idea, often involves review of body-worn camera. It could be 911 recordings, police reports, dispatch records. Those are the things that we look at, in addition to any kind of materials that community members want to submit to us for our consideration. So we have the ability to receive video or photos in addition to people's statements. So we do the preliminary review to decide sort of what classification, what type of investigatory and resolution steps make the most sense from there. From that point, and I should say at this point, that preliminary review is made very efficient and seamless by the really good work by Cindy and her team to get us those records as quickly as possible. They are so attentive and detail oriented. Sometimes we really have to, it's not straightforward to find all the records that are associated with the complaint, and they do a great job of finding them and getting them to us in a really, really efficient way so that we can do our work and get things moving in the pipeline. So I want to shout out to them that's a really wonderful working relationship that has made our jobs much better. So we classify the complaints. We also then participate in monitoring the investigations. So while our office does not conduct the investigations, that's the role of IA, we sit in on interviews and sort of follow the progress of the investigations. If it's a case that ends up being allegations, like serious allegation of misconduct, we also, after the investigation is complete, provide adjudication recommendations for the chief's consideration. The chief is the final adjudicator, but we submit our memos, just like he receives memos from the people in his chain of command to consider when he's making his adjudication decision. And then in addition to those things, we do things like annual reports, reporting out to the community on trends periodically. There's a monthly auditor's report that gets out some of that information, and we provide support for the Civilian Review Board. So the Civilian Review Board is, obviously we share a member with the Police Commission, which makes a lot of sense, but the Civilian Review Board reviews cases that have been fully investigated and closed, and they're basically reviewing our work, the work of the auditor's office. Do they agree with the practices and the way that the complaint came in, how it was classified, how it was monitored and investigated, and then they weigh in on their opinions about the adjudication recommendation. Because these cases are already closed, they don't have any, they don't have a determining factor in like the outcome of the case, but it's to provide transparency so that there's civilian input also over our office and how we do our work. So that's like the really fast version. I'm going to leave off for Cindy, and actually, Rob, do you have something else that you would like to add before I hand over? I had one more thing, and then if you have anything.
I don't. You did an excellent job covering it.
So, in 2023, because we're talking about 2023, right? We took in 371 complaints. Just as a general overview, in the last 5 years, it's been between like 300 and 400 complaints. It's like in a typical year. I think the high water mark was 2019 with 446 complaints. So last year was kind of, average-ish with 371. After doing preliminary reviews, 103 of those complaints were dismissed. There's a list of reasons in the ordinance that determine when complaints should be dismissed. Common ones are that they're outside of our jurisdiction, like if it has to do with the Lane County Jail or Springfield Police, we don't look at those. That the complaints were not considered timely as defined by city code, that there's an alternate remedy available. So for example, this process, our office doesn't look at to determine whether you were guilty or innocent of a crime. That's something that should go through the court system. And in that case, we would say, there's an alternate remedy for that, or that there were no alleged or observable policy violations. So those are some reasons why things get dismissed after preliminary review. And which means that there were 266 complaints that went into the system and were completely investigated and then closed out. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it over to Cindy to do the rest of the presentation, but I will be here to answer any questions that you have, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, if you could pull that, that'd be great. While Holly is pulling up a PowerPoint presentation, I'll introduce myself. Cindy Coleman, the Professional Standards Manager at EPD. I've met many of you, but it's nice to see some new faces here, and thank you for your service here. I have been with the department 29 years and in internal affairs for 23. So I have seen the evolution of the program and the process before civilian oversight, with the introduction of a civilian oversight, and up to today. And there's really been a lot that's happened over the years, and pretty proud of the overall program that we have. I think she's working on the presentation. As Lindsay introduced, we do work together. We do have a shared database. A lot of the data that you'll see here has the benefit of all the cases were closed. So there will be some, that's the benefit of that.
Folks that are joining on Zoom, can you see that PowerPoint?
I can see it, yes.
So I think we're just gonna use.
Can you put it on the slideshow view?
I did that and then I lost it.
Oh,
So can we just go through it this way?
sure. I can go through it that way as long as everybody else can see. So you can go to the next one. So who's an IA? We have two current IA sergeants, Sergeant Jensen and Sergeant Peckles. They are rotating positions. So they're in the positions usually 3 years, and then they rotate out and we'll get a new sergeant that will come in and help us. But for 2023, those were our two sergeants. Our senior program coordinator, Rick Weber, he's been with the department 10 years. He's leaving us next week. So we'll have a new staff person coming in, Erin Danaher, to assist us, and myself. This is just a snapshot of the last 5 years, comparing the total number of complaints classified as allegations compared to incident reviews, service complaints, supervisor actions, which are service complaints, policy complaints and inquiries, and commendations. I also wanted to mention that we, in addition to sharing a database, IA Pro with the auditor's office,
we have a companion database that we use within the department called Blue Team. And the auditor's office also has visibility to Blue Team. And you'll hear us talking about officers and sergeants entering data in that way. And that's how it gets into visibility to our office and to the auditor's office.
It's kind of sensitive.
I see that.
And if you want me to drive, I can.
Maybe you should drive. Okay, thank you, Holly.
Yes, can we ask questions as we go through the slides as to not bombard her at the end?
What will be easiest for you, Cindy?
I think it'd be easier if I go through the data and then we can go back and address any other questions.
Okay.
That would be my preference. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just looking at where we've been the last 10 years, the IA average complaints a year is 28, but we had only 19 in 2023. So it was a little lower than our average. Incident reviews remained consistent with our average of 26. And we had slightly over average of supervisor actions. And again, supervisor actions are those lower level complaints that are assigned to a first line supervisor to review. And they can be classified as service complaints, policy complaints, or inquiries. And we'll talk about each of these categories a little bit more with specifics, but I just wanted to put that in the framework for you when you're looking at the stats. So for internal affairs investigations, these are the cases that are classified by the auditor as an allegation of misconduct or an allegation of criminal misconduct. So when we're looking at these stats on the next slide, Holly, thank you. Out of all those complaints that we received in 2023, 19 were classified as those serious misconduct investigations. And they are investigated by internal affairs sergeants, different than the service level complaints that are going to be investigated by a first line supervisor. And these require or consist of a very comprehensive investigation, a formal adjudication and process, as well as if a case is sustained, there could be discipline attached to that. And in looking at these IA cases, they were subclassified by the auditor as conduct. You can see the majority of the cases involved were considered conduct-related cases. We'll move on to the next one. So again, we're still talking about those 19 IA cases. We had 10 of those were sustained this year. So 10 out of the 19 were sustained and 3 were within policy. And you can see that 2 were administratively closed and there were insufficient evidence and unfounded or within or not adjudicated or resigned. Sometimes that will happen. You can go ahead and move to the next slide. So out of those 19 individual cases, we had 57 separate allegations of misconduct or listed policy violations that were attached to those cases. And so out of those 57, 31 were sustained. So this is just a little deeper dive in the look of the how those adjudications were, how they were dispositioned based on the type of the subclass that was assigned by the auditor. I don't know if you guys can see that very clearly. So this is something I'd like to take a little bit of time to explain because I think it's really interesting. So it does show a 5-year view of it, but if you focus on 2023, This shows those 19 cases, 10 of which were internally generated and 9 came from an external source. And so out of those 10 that were internally generated, 6 of those were sustained. And out of the 9 that were externally generated, 4 were sustained. So we have a really large percentage of cases that are internally identified. And I think that that shows that we have a pretty healthy system of reporting misconduct when it comes to our attention within the department. And as was previously mentioned, so the auditor has that exclusive authority to classify, which is really important because that determines which path each complaint is going to take. And they can weigh in on, they can participate in the investigation, and they can, and they do recommend adjudication, but the chief is the final decision maker on discipline. And this shows us in 2023 where those sustained cases fell within the corrective action list. Incident reviews. So incident reviews, I'd like to spend a little time talking about those because I think they have been a real powerful tool for the auditor's office and an efficient tool for the department. So as the auditor is doing their preliminary review, if they don't feel like they have enough information to determine if a case warrants a full IA investigation, they can classify a case as an incident review so that we can provide do additional investigative steps and provide them with the information they need. And that can include any investigative step short of interviewing the involved employee. And it has really been helpful to have this classification because prior to 2016 getting this classification, many of the cases would have been full IA investigations. And so this has been a good tool to get them the information they need to understand what happened to classify the case. So this means those 26 cases were closed out as incident reviews. The IA sergeant was able to do the investigation, provide the information to the auditor to satisfy them that we could, and they'll do the follow-up with the complainant, but it satisfied the auditor that the case could be closed with that level of investigation. And you can see 46% of those were classified or subclassified by the auditor as performance, where most of the IA cases were conduct related. Most of these incident reviews in last year were performance based. Supervisor actions. Again, these are determined by the auditor to be a service complaint, a policy complaint, or an inquiry. And they are generally assigned to the employee's first line supervisor. They're still investigated. Follow-up with the complainant is still conducted by the sergeant. And we have the documentation of what their findings and assessment were. But they don't require that full formal IA investigation. And these are all, they go into our system and they're all have visibility to the auditor's office so they can monitor the investigations conducted by first line supervisors. And you can see a majority of these were classified as service complaints. This is just a view going back the last 5 years to see the classification trends for the auditor within that body of those supervisor actions. Just to get a snapshot of what that looked like. So we do not, or the auditor does not subclassify inquiries and policy complaints, but we do subclassify service complaints. And they're listed here with the most of 36% performance and 31% service level. A few years back, we decided to use or identify some complaint categories to help us better track trends, emerging trends that we were seeing. And this is a list of our current categories that we use. And this has been helpful for us internally to just get a snapshot. As you can imagine, we actually had quite a few COVID-related complaints during that period of time, and not so many now, but at the time it was helpful. Also, when we were in 2020 and 21, having the classification or the category of riots and protests also helped us make sure and track all those complaints that were related to the protests. One thing I would say is, yes, this is what, so for last year, the categories are listed here. We added 3 different categories for 2023, or 3 new ones. Auto collision, no report, insufficient follow-up. That is not insufficient follow-up of the actual police investigation that happened. It's meant to identify situations where I contacted an officer and they haven't called me back. That kind of insufficient follow-up, because we were starting to see some of those. So that we added that one, as well as untimely patrol response. Pardon me, due to staffing and we really were seeing a trend of folks being upset that we were not meeting their expectations in the time frame to get an officer to respond to their call for service. Pardon me. One of the categories that we've been tracking since 2016 is bias-based policing complaints. And so I wanted to just clarify for the group that any complaint of bias-based policing is logged into our system and investigated just like any other complaint. But in addition to that, we track it with this category, and I report out that information to the state as those complaints are closed out. And last year we had 3 bias-based policing complaints. Real quick, one of the things that we track within the department are vehicle crashes and vehicle damage. It's important to note that these are not all vehicle accidents. This is any incident involving one of our EPD fleet vehicles that sustains any damage for any reason. So that could be anything from an accident to a citizen throws a rock and breaks the windshield of a car, or it's used as a vehicular use of force. So we just want to track damage to our vehicles, and so we use this module to do that. So last year there were 75 total incidents. 26 or 35% of them were determined to be at fault, and 65% were determined to be not at fault. And patrol, as you might imagine, was where the majority of those incidents took place. I wanted to throw this in here as just some perspective. So for all those, for those at fault incidents, look at how many miles that the EPD fleet vehicles were on the road. So just to put that in perspective a little bit. Vehicle pursuits. This is another thing that we track and we monitor. As you can see, in 2023, we had a significant spike from 2022, and especially when you compare it to stats from 2021. I believe the auditor's office did a really comprehensive analysis of vehicle pursuits, so I'm not going to go into too much data too much detail here, but it wasn't lost on us that we had a big spike. And I wanted to make sure and let you know that, so out of the 16 that we had last year, we only had one that was outside policy. And we do have a restrictive pursuit policy where officers need to weigh the risk to the public and the community against the necessity to apprehend the person fleeing. Reckless driving was the most common reason that were cited for initiating the pursuit in 2023. And I know I'm kind of blowing through this quick, but there's a lot of questions. I want to leave time for questions. And this is just a snapshot of the 5-year trend looking at the reasons pursuits were initiated. And again, that reckless driving pops up at the top.
Reckless driving on part of the public person, not the officer, correct?
What's that?
Reckless driving on the part of
Yes.
the member of the public.
Yes, the reason that the officer initiated the pursuit to begin with. Force response. So the department tracks every reportable use of force. And it is now the task of each individual officer to do the data entry into Blue Team if they are engaged in a reportable use of force. In 2023, we had 138. And all use of force incidents are reviewed by the entire chain of command. They're also reviewed by IA and the police auditor and the defensive tactics supervisor. So we pay a lot of attention on a case-by-case basis of what's happening. And if we need to make any adjustments to training or policy, or it could be an individual performance issue that's identified. During that review by anywhere in that chain or the police auditor's office, we believe we might have we think we might have an outside policy violation for a use of force, that can initiate an IA investigation on that. What was listed for 2023 for factors leading up to the force, and this is consistent with prior years, active resistance is the most common, and 57% of the cases last year was listed, with actually armed 17 and attempting to flee 10%. 86% of the incidents resulted in arrest, and the average age of the offender was 35. Taser deployment. The use increased by 19% this last year, but it's fairly consistent with the year before that. So not a big swing. What thing is, I think, important to note is the effectiveness of taser deployments increased to 66%. So that's pretty good. We got 29 effective, 12 that were determined as ineffective, and that typically one or no probes actually make contact, or there was no effect, or the probe spread was too small, so it became an ineffective. And 3 were listed as limited effectiveness. And that's just shows that. Canine. So last year we only had 4 canine deployments, which is a substantial decrease from the prior year of 13. All 4 of them were deemed effective and within policy. And the reasons for use were listed as active resistance, attempt to flee, and reported or believed armed. This is a snapshot of the last 5 years and the 7 most common force types depicted. So it's not every force type that is available to officers, but these were the ones that are consistently at the top of the list. And it gives you a little visual from year to year how each individual force type has either gone up or down in use. So you can see taser use has significantly decreased from 2019. Show force. So a few years ago, we added into what we're tracking reportable shows of force. So this is when an officer points a weapon, their extended range impact weapon, a firearm, or a taser directly at an individual to gain compliance. And also we track it for the use of a canine as a deterrent. And this is how that showed up for 2023.
Can I
Sure.
interject there? I think I want to make sure that we understand when we talk about gaining compliance. We do not unholster our firearm or point a taser at somebody unless it's absolutely justified to be able to use that level of force. And we hope that we don't have to deploy that and gain compliance. We under no circumstances pull out a gun when we don't have the justification to do that just to simply gain compliance, like we're trying to bully somebody into doing something we do. We don't use it as such. So when Cindy talks about to gain compliance, it is justified. The amount of force that we're using at the time is justified. And oftentimes what we see and suspect reaction to that is to go ahead and comply with commands. But I just want to make sure that that distinction is known, is that we've, going back to my days in Portland, we had some instances, and not to speak to ill will, but Portland had a tendency to be in a situation where it was using a taser to just get people to do what they wanted to do when there really wasn't any justification for it coming out of the holster. And so that resonated with me as I'm chief here in Eugene, and we wanted to make sure that we are capturing show of force, but just understand that if the force is being shown, it's because we feel like it's justified to be able to use that force if things escalate from where they're at.
Right. I'll add just a couple more little details about this data. So out of the shows of force that are listed, reported or believed armed, actually armed, felony stop, and attempt to flee were the most common reasons that shows of force were used. And the effective rate was high at 87%. So for the arrest data, again, I just wanted to put this up here as just an illustration of how many arrests are made compared to how much force is used within the department. You can go to that next slide, Holly. So force is used in only 2% of all of the arrests that are made. And this next slide is just an illustration looking back over 5 years of, you can see our use of force generally is fairly consistent, is our complaints fairly consistent with a little bit of variation, as well as our commendations. I want to talk a little bit about commendations because it is a very important part of what Office of Professional Standards does and tracks, because you'll see from the first chart that we got way more commendations than pardon me, complaints. And it is important feedback for our officers to get. I know the chief routinely will share examples at in-service with the officers so that they are getting that feedback as well. And This will show that we do track both commendations that are internally generated as well as citizen commendations. And this shows you that 21% of the commendations received externally were through email. They did add the portal, I think January of 2023, that's the 6%. I imagine that the use of the portal will increase. I think it's also another effective tool that the auditor's office has been implementing for both their office as well as for citizens, an easy way for them to file a complaint, provide additional information, and keep track of where the case is in the status of its movement through the investigative stage. Common themes for commendations. These have remained really consistent over the years with feedback that officers or employees, I should say, it's not just officers, we track commendations on all of our employees, that they're tactful, compassionate, caring and patient, or efficient, professional, and thorough. That's just broad strokes, but I believe our commendations are published in your packet every month, so that gives you a little bit of a actual summaries of each of the citizen commendations that come in. I encourage you to take a look at those. Lessons learned. One of the most important things about our process is that whether it's a service complaint or a formal allegation of misconduct, there are sometimes a lesson to be learned, and that could come in the way of an individual performance issue that was identified, or maybe we need to adjust our training or even revise our policy. And so every case that comes through our office, we look at it when it's done and our compiled trends that we see that come out of those cases. And not just that, but if there is something that we think needs adjustment worth training, we'll contact the training lieutenant and provide that recommendation that they consider making that adjustment, or at least evaluating if an adjustment is appropriate. Driving complaints, that is a continued theme that we've been seeing over the last many years. Community members really pay attention to the driving of our police department employees, and they let us know. And that is one of those categories that we track, and the kind of performance coaching or counseling that happens out of that is to remember to model safe and courteous driving and exercise sound judgment, drive with due care, that type of thing. Performance, here's just some examples of the performance issues that were identified in 2023. Again, remember to check and promptly respond to citizen email and voicemail. Customer service, that's sort of foundational. De-escalation techniques. Occasionally there's room for improvement with that, so that will be provided to the employee, as well as just basic investigative gathering, investigative information. And we still had a couple of situations where we needed to remind employees about the requirements of activating their body-worn video. It's gotten better, but it's gotten much better. But it is still something that pops up now and again. We're paying attention to it. I already talked about this a little bit, customer service, the importance of that. This is a list of the policies that were published in 2023. This group may recognize some of them as having gone through them and provided your input on. And similarly, a list of the procedures that were updated in 2023. Police accreditation. As you probably know, we are an accredited agency, and Julie Barong is our accreditation manager, and she's been working very hard at trying to wrap up our accreditation cycle that ends this winter. And so it's going to be capturing the data that we need to report and the proofs that we need to show for calendar years 2022, 23, and 2024. And so we hope to wrap that up this winter with a successful audit and become reaccredited. Quality assurance, we have a quality assurance analyst that works really closely with our property control unit and our lab in ensuring that we are meeting our best practices in that area. And she is a great asset to have to the department to assist us in making sure that we're on track in that regard. Training, just some highlights from our training section for 2023. They ran 4 lateral recruit pre-academy sessions, and they started a new bailiff training program in 2023. They coordinated 9 in-service trainings, and they continued the ethos leadership training to the entire department. So now, any questions? I know that was a lot. I apologize for going through it really quick, but.
I have a number.
Okay.
So the first easy one is, you mentioned that tasers have improved in their effectiveness quite a bit. Does that correspond to increased training or new tasers, or is there anything behind it that we can point to?
I guess I can't answer that specifically. I think that we did get a different type of tracer issued in 2022.
Equipment's getting better. Like with any company, Taser figures out a way to come out with a new product about every 2 to 3 years and then gets you to buy their new product. So the product is better. Training is better as we see the nuances of the new product. So I think it's a combination of both.
Excellent. Next question I have is for Lindsay and Leah, if she's still on. But we have quite a bit of data here about the types of complaints that come in. I was wondering if the trends behind who is complaining are tracked, i.e. we've seen a lot of violence against women over the past year in particular. There's been a huge spike. I'm wondering if there is a disproportionate number of complaints coming in from women or from people of color, etc.
So we do try to track some of that information. I would say the data on that is not amazing. And part of that is because we don't make requirements on people to disclose information when they are reporting. And a lot of people are just simply not comfortable sharing a lot of information about themselves when they're trying to make a complaint. So because we are so sensitive to that, and we can take anonymous complaints, we can take third-party complaints. You can include as little or much information about yourself. Very, very few people choose to disclose a lot of identifying details. So I wish I could tell you more about those trends. We've kind of gone back and forth about how we might want to, there are ways that we could sort of entice people to share more with us, but our concern was that then that may discourage or create a barrier to complaining. So I can't tell you that I see some clear thing, mostly because of just sort of the paucity of data. So sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and it's something that we have the capacity to track a lot of different variables based on what the person would like to share with us, but very few people choose to share much more than their name, sometimes only first name, and maybe a phone number or email or address so that we can get back in touch with them. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's anything that jumps out immediately. anecdotally, in terms of like trends of complainants, other than to say the people who have more police contacts are more likely to complain, if that makes sense.
Yes, and thank you for paying attention. I figured the answer would be something along protecting complainers, but it is good to have confirmation there. One more question before I hand it off to somebody else to take the floor. We have, it's not our role on the police commission to dig into incidents and to track, certainly not to track any disciplinary actions taken. However, in the interest of transparency, does the CRB get any feedback on discipline actions taken as a result of their investigations? No. And it is a perennial issue that I'm really hoping we can come to some sort of solution on. I know it's in your hands, Chief, but we need transparency there.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I hear that, Commissioner Shivers, and it's definitely been an issue that's come up as you know, up and down throughout the years. I think one of the sort of nuances of it is actually in the ordinance. It says that our office will not have input into discipline. So that is sort of an ordinance level issue because the CRB then reviews the work of the auditor's office and of IA. The CRB is not actually reviewing, that's one reason why we draw that line there, because our office doesn't have input into discipline. Therefore, they would then be reviewing the work of the chief, not the work of our office. Does that help kind of there's some layers there that I want to make sure to articulate.
Yes, it is clearly a systemic problem, and I respect the reasons that it exists. It also needs to change.
I'm not advocating anyway. I just wanted to make sure all the layers were there.
And I would say that change doesn't solely lie with me.
Yeah, I know.
Because there's personal policy, there's statewide protections for employees that are going through disciplinary process, union implications, ordinance implications. And so just know that it's not a resistance from the chief's level. It's a multifaceted issue that needs to be addressed.
Thank you for articulating that.
Commissioner Lyman.
Yeah, I'm just gonna riff on that, Commissioner Shivers. I was frustrated as a CRB member by not being able to connect what we're looking at in terms of incidents and things that happen, and then have no idea what happened to this. Did this warrant a suspension? Did this warrant a discipline? Now, I will say that thanks to Cindy and this report that we just heard, you are able to sleuth, if you're interested, to put it together and match. If you have CRB Act, you could begin to see that this report tells us that how many officers resigned in lieu of discipline, how many were, and so you could tell in a given year, you kind of knew the big things that happened and you could tell that something happened. And I respect the union and the confidentiality of employees and all those things. But until we had Cindy's report, that was a huge thing for me. I'm less burdened by it now that I can see that, in a given year, you can see that he did discipline people. But at CRB, you had no idea whether anything happened at all. And so it's a combination of the two, and it's part of the interaction between the two things. And my only other, this is a really simple, stupid question, but a bailiff program for muni court, or do we have a position called bailiff in the police department?
We do. Do we have 3 bailiffs?
You have 3 bailiffs.
3 bailiffs.
Okay, and so is that,
So they created
are
a
they
training
for
program.
court, or is that, so at the court, because they're like in England or something, they have bailiffs that are not, and we used to have agents here in Eugene, but we don't anymore, correct?
Right.
So this was a court program, okay, so you're training bailiffs for municipal court?
They are our employees, but they
work
are
there.
our employees, but they do the bailiff function through the.
So the municipal court used to have private security guards. Is that not the case
I think
anymore?
they still have
They
security.
still do, but what we filled the bailiff function with was police officers, pulling them off the street to do the bailiff work. And so, Julie can speak to how her downtown team often would get tasked with an awful lot of this work. So we finally figured out a way to actually hire that position and keep our police officers on the street.
And funding that is not taking money from having police officers on, I mean, we didn't just create a new position for police employees. did
Well,
we?
what we found is with our existing budget is trying to find a way to use our money effectively. So we didn't reduce any police officer positions, but we did find the money to fund bailiffs, knowing that we'd be much more efficient and have more officer hours on the street. And so that trade-off was a win-win for me.
Thank you.
Dr. Booker has been waiting super patiently.
No worries. I have a couple questions. Before I have my questions, I want to make a statement that we as commissioners have to be mindful of how politics plays a part in policing. And I will omit names, but under the previous president name, we can't forget George Floyd, Ferguson, and Charlottesville, and how there was a lack of accountability when it came to policing. And with the new president and the implementation of the executive order of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it prompted an in-depth analysis into looking at systematic and institutional racism, hence the improvement in the numbers you see from the previous president's years to the current one, and how that plays a part in the data tracking and paying attention to things that weren't being paid attention to. My question, I have three questions. My first question is, what classifies something as a serious misconduct?
Leah,
So
do you
that-
want to take that one?
Yeah, I can jump. Yeah, I can. Everything seems calm. So serious misconduct typically is so I know we touched on this, but preliminary investigation includes complaint from the reporting party, including whatever videos, photos, documents they want to give to us, review of body worn camera, review of the police report. We do a really thorough front look at things, right? If when we're looking at that, we can see that there seems to be a policy, like a policy that appears to potentially have been violated, right? So like use of force, code of conduct, use of taser, those are kind of our, the ones that I think are probably memorized at this point. So that's kind of it, is if there's a clear violation of policy or apparent violation of policy, that's going to be an allegation of misconduct. If it's just more of a miscommunication, could have gone better, that kind of thing, that's going to be more of a service complaint.
Okay, glad you said that, policy violation. Given that we're constantly being told that our business is policy, I did hear Ms. Cindy say that they do not subclassify policy complaints, but as a commission, could the IA work with our commission to subclassify those complaints? And could we get a list of those policy complaints so that we as a commission know how to work on policy to address those policy complaints?
I can speak to that a little bit, Cindy, and I know you can too, but because I don't want to commit IA to any, because that's not who I work for. But the policy complaints, I want to be clear. So policy complaints are classified as such because someone is complaining about the policy. So for instance, one of the common ones is I was in a car accident, there were no injuries, nobody came. That's a policy that EPD is following. Like nobody at EPD did anything out of policy, but the policy itself is what the community member has a problem with, if that makes sense. And so those actually, if you look at the end of our annual report, the one that's online, the appendices at the back list every complaint that we got and the classification of it. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily user-friendly. We can try to look at that and see if we can arrange it differently, but that Appendix B will include every single service complaint, every single policy complaint, every inquiry and incident review is all listed there. So you can kind of get a gist of where those where those tend to focalize. It's a long day. Focus. Cindy, did I miss anything there?
You captured it. I think that what we could do is use that category to, if we're seeing a trend that we're getting a lot of complaints about a certain policy, we could use that category to track that way. That would be one suggestion. Probably more efficient than subcategory. Anyway.
Yeah, because it would be good to understand what policies we could focus on that are especially in light of this report. So instead of just focusing on policies that really aren't going to be effective in changing anything towards our community or specific demographics. That leads me to the next one. Given the bias and hate crime reports that I've extensively reviewed over the last 7 to 10 years, I would like to know that used in conjunction with this, because in that report, the Black community has been the target of basically pretty much every crime that was listed in that report, not being the person committing the crimes, but the crimes committed against the Black community. So given that there was no demographic data shown in this particular data or review or report, in the future, is the IA willing to look at the bias and hate crime report in conjunction with this particular report and how it aligns with the community at large? Oh, you muted. Sorry.
Man, 4 years in. Yeah, we're always open to working with our city partners on that. My understanding, and Lindsay actually can probably speak to this better than I can, but the hate and bias crime report is focused on, yes, crimes committed against folks in the Black community and marginalized communities. And so that's not necessarily complaints that police, that the police didn't respond right? So it's a criminal complaint. It's a criminal investigation, right? As opposed to what we tend to look at is, did policy get violated? Is there administrative investigation that needs to happen, right? So every so often those kind of overlap, right? There was a hate or bias crime. We don't feel like the police responded appropriately. We didn't feel heard, right? And so those we work with the human rights, OECE, to get those into our office so we can look at those. And we look at the police part of it, the police conduct part of it, but we wouldn't do any kind of underlying criminal investigation into the hate or bias crime, because that's something that the peace officers are tasked with doing. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. And then I guess question for Chief. He was talking about I would like to know what justifies show of force from a policy perspective, and can that be sent to us as a commission, any policy they might have on what would justify show of force, i.e. pulling your gun, the K9s, and taser use?
Sorry, you caught me with my mouth full. If I understand the question, in our policy, and Julie might be able to speak to this better, but in our policy, whether it's the taser policy or any other policy, the K9 policy, there should be language in there that articulates when that level of force is justified, or give you some examples of the types of things officers would encounter that would have that level of force to be justified to use. And so if you wanted to look at those individual policies and make some recommendations or better understand what is the existing justification for us to unholster a weapon, or to unholster a taser and point it at somebody, or send a dog on a take, we could kind of pick those off one at a time, talk about industry standards, what current practice is, what we see is the right way to respond with that, and then give you that ability to weigh in on whether you think that's reasonable justification or not reasonable justification. If nothing else, it certainly will provide for open dialogue, good dialogue, and some level of education on the types of things we encounter that, for instance, would warrant the unholstering of our duty weapon, those types of things.
Yes, sir. I would love for you to send those to us, just so we can start that dialogue. I think that's really important moving forward. So Theo, thank you for that answer. And then I would
like to reiterate that all those policies are public view. You can look at any of those policies at any time you want by going through the public portal to the Eugene Police Department. So you can look at those policies anytime you want. We don't have to send them to you for you to look at them. They are available for anyone from the public to look at.
I get it, but some of the people that I service in the Black community don't have internet access, so I would like to be able to print it out. And when I hold meetings, be able to explain and show them exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's why I would say it'd be easier if it was sent to us. And then I'll abstain my rest of my questions to give other people an opportunity.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Just to follow up on something Commissioner Booker said about, and that was responded to by the auditor and by Cindy, I think too. So at CRB, we're reviewing investigations into potential policy violations, and so our role is to sort of have an overview of whether we think a policy violation that was investigated, the process of looking into that was appropriate, essentially. And so it's not so much that the policy, we aren't often looking at the policy as problematic. So it's not the statistics that would come out of the investigations that we're looking at wouldn't be so much about whether the policy was problematic. So I'm not sure that like getting the statistics of that would be helpful in terms of policy review. However, there are times, and what your question sort of like conjured in me, there are times when an investigation leads to an understanding that a police officer did something that was within policy, and all of us are a little uncomfortable about the fact that it was within policy, but we probably agree. And those times are when we sort of think like, oh, well, maybe the policy is not written the best way it could be written. And those are the moments, and that yeah, actually would be helpful for the police commission to sort of look at that specific policy. And I don't know how, I guess I don't know how we track that at the CRB or in the auditor's office. Just the like discomfort with the fact that something is within policy, but and we agree, all of the CRB agrees with that adjudication, but doesn't really think that it was the best outcome for the community.
So those do come through either Leah or Cindy to me.
Okay.
To look at those policies, and we didn't do any of those in 2023, but in 22 we did, and you guys helped work on that specific policy.
Okay, yeah.
To align with your concerns of the CRB. Those were clarified in that policy, and that policy was revised. So.
Okay, great.
Vice Chair Shivers.
Also, to speak on that specifically, it sounds like there are two avenues we can look at. What Cindy was talking about are policies that the community in general is dissatisfied with, which I think it's a very good avenue for us to get ideas for our work plan coming up. And the second one, when the CRB is uncomfortable with policy or would like it to be more robust enough, I'm very glad to have you at the table because I'm hoping you will provide another avenue for those. Whenever that happens, bring that to us. Whether it's as chair and vice chair or as a commission as a whole, we can get our eyes on that and try to track it ourselves and bring it up at the next work planning session.
Yeah, and I should clarify, it's not often.
Yeah,
it's
hopefully.
Yeah, it's not often to that, but yeah, I think it has. Yeah.
I just want to say it is I would say, and you can tell me if you disagree, there was generally a consensus, not a unanimous, but that the body worn video policy should be visited because there was repeated frustration about it's within policy that it's deactivated for these tactical discussions and stuff is missed. And there was an ongoing debate about wouldn't it be easier to be always on and have to redact? I mean, not to have the discussion, but that's one. Commissioner Shivers that I think could be passed along if it hasn't already been, so.
Yes, and we're happy to take those on. The one thing that I would just, as a caveat, share with the commission, when you think about those policy things, the community-wide policy frustrations, is some of those are born out of operational decisions that I've had to make. For a great example is not responding to non-injury, low vehicle damage collisions for sake of resource allocation. We'll see a lot of frustration where people go to other communities where police officers respond to everything and come here and are frustrated that they've had a fender bender and they're off the roadway and they don't understand why a police officer hasn't come to help the two parties exchange information. So there may be from time to time just some operational things that I'll share with you, kind of the thought process around that if they come up on your work plan.
That had occurred to me, and I am very interested in making sure that the commission and the community as a whole is aware that we just have to make hard decisions sometimes.
Madam Chair. Yes, Commissioner Carson.
Thank you. I had a question at the top of page 32, where you talk about training staff issues.
Yeah.
And it says in January, I'm just gonna very briefly, in January 2023, that they lost 3 personnel for various reasons. On a team that is only budgeted at 4.5 personnel. So my question is, as of September 2024, how is the staffing on the training?
So this is a direct impact from budget cuts, citywide budget cuts. Prior to, I'm not gonna have my year completely right, but prior to 2019, 2020, essentially, let me put it this way, Commissioner, we've fallen back to our original staffing that we saw in like the 2019, 2020 era. We went through an experiment by standing up a standalone training group in the hopes of having trainers that were well-versed in a variety of disciplines that would result in the lessening of the overtime burden to detach other people from their primary function to teach the discipline. That didn't pan out as well as we had thought. We were still paying a lot of overtime and we had the training staff there. And so when asked to make some tough decisions about budget cuts, we had to contract back to our original 2019-ish, 2020 staffing numbers. But the numbers of training, the hours of training that officers are getting every year has not decreased. The quality of training has not decreased. We've just had to go back to the old way of doing things, which is to detach people that are a part of ad hoc assignments like DT instructors, firearms instructors, emergency vehicle operations instructors, pull them off the road, unfortunately, or out of their discipline to teach these things. And so it was just one of those tough decisions during budget cuts.
Is there any cost effectiveness to outsourcing that training to consultants or to the private community?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is there any financial benefit to outsourcing training instead of having it conducted by officers?
You know, we're always looking, and we oftentimes bring outside contracts in to do certain trainings. What's challenging around that is so much of our training responsibility and standards are set by the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, and many of those are our police officers. So we're either using our own people or we're asking other agencies to send us their people, and they're not very willing to do that. And so we've used our own people. There's some other types of training that we will outsource, but when it comes to the disciplines that were designed to try and be done through having full-time trainers, which is EVOC, emergency vehicle operation, firearms, defensive tactics, those hard skills that that are mandated by DPSST, those are hard to outsource.
Thank you.
Vice Chair?
I do have more questions that I put aside earlier. The first one for Chief, are commendations considered when looking at raises and or promotions?
No.
Okay. Are complaints looked at when considering raises or raises or promotions? So,
not raises, yes, promotions.
okay. And I imagine, I know labor is heavily involved in raises and scheduling.
Raises for our represented staff are bargained every 3 years, and so that's a contract bargaining. For non-represented staff, the city sets that standard, and we'll hopefully do a market analysis every few years to make sure that those are right sized.
Next question is for Beatriz. I think I saw her name earlier, but Lindsay or Leah, you might also have the answer. I know outreach is a big part of the work you do. I hope it's gotten easier in the wake of COVID rather than trying to do it during COVID.
You have to click on it.
And my second question was specifically outreach to neighborhood organizations like neighborhood through the Office of Neighborhood Engagement. And the second one was outreach through community or grassroots news organizations. I'm thinking of podcasts like Thomas Heroes, which I've seen a number of who's come up on, and I'm just wondering sort of the grassroots outreach, if there's any of that.
Hi, Sean. Sorry, I lost you a little bit there while I was being promoted to panelist. Could you repeat that?
It'll give me a second chance to put it right. Two-part question. One is, how has it gotten easier in the wake of COVID? And the second part is, have you managed to do outreach to, I know neighborhood organizations is part of it, or used to be. And the second part of that is, as an alternative, I'm thinking of community news organizations or grassroots outreach, like local podcasts, for example.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. How has it gotten easier since COVID? Well, it's great to see the return of all of the in-person events. It was tough there for a while trying to do virtual. I can share that we have the return of our public safety forum, which we are rebranding to a community resource fair, because we have noticed that there's a trend of not just talking about public safety specifically, but just what is available throughout the city of Eugene for everybody, particularly in Spanish, because this is an event that we focus on for the Spanish speaking community in Eugene. We did do outreach to neighborhood associations a lot prior to the pandemic. We haven't so much so after I was recently invited to attend a lot of the summer socials. So we have started to sort of ease our way into those again. But we are interested in attending the neighborhood association meetings. And sometimes it makes sense to partner whenever EPD is invited. Sometimes it makes sense to maybe do that at a separate conversation. We know that some neighborhood associations don't meet very often, so it's about trying to make time in their schedule because they have very busy agendas, but we are certainly interested in trying to hit those areas again. And I forget the second part of your question, but we've tried to reach out to the Spanish speaking population through a Spanish radio station that is available. That's very popular right now. There's a Latinx, it's sort of a Facebook radio station that's not very active anymore, but we do continue to do outreach through the Aquí en la Ciudad, which is a Spanish city news segment that the city runs through a grant. So that is a way that we're getting out there sort of through a different venue virtually. But we are interested in exploring future, anybody that will take us really to be able to share the work that we're doing and just really getting the message about our office across. So if you have any leads, we are always open and available and willing to meet with people so that we can get our foot in the door and get the message across.
Thank you. I know we have an extraordinarily community-focused commission, so hopefully one of the things we can do as we engage with the community is direct anybody who might have access to populations that are, particularly ones that are underserved, and direct them toward Beatriz and the Office of the Auditor to connect those populations with the services that the city provides. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Dr. Booker?
Yes, as last question about this particular report, for Chief, as it pertains to this report in my initial statement in commissioner comments, the further need for a cultural audit, is there any preventative work being done or any proactive work or any work being done since this report came out in terms of being proactive versus reactive?
I guess I'll have to better understand work being done with regards to the types of complaints that we are seeing, or
we could scale it down just to the 10 internal and 9 external. If you want, we've just focus on those, since those were classified as serious misconduct.
I guess I'm struggling to understand. I mean, part of what the importance of this annual report is to also inform whether or not we see us trending in a certain direction that is concerning. This report did not reveal anything that is revealing itself to be concerning with regards to the number of complaints. Certainly, I would love to be able to go through an entire year with no complaints, but that's not going to happen with 350 employees and what we're asked to do in this community every single day. But I don't see anything. I've not been made aware of anything in this report that is particularly concerning. Now, having said that, the depth of the types of complaints that we see, the Office of Professional Standards is really good about saying if there's any trend analysis to suggest that we're having, for instance, more officers than usual engaging in force, or more officers than usual engaging in courtesy complaints, and being able to do some early warning stuff with respect to either additional training, or in some cases, because we're dealing with individuals, there may be something going on with that individual that we might need to insert, back to the law enforcement, health and mental wellness piece, insert PCERT because they're going through a tough personal time or family challenges, and it's starting to show up in their work product. So that's stuff that's not particularly formalized. It's more an informal type of engagement and conversation that we have. And that's why we meet every single week and have these discussions. And same with the auditor's office. If we see a name come across our desks more frequently than should be, then it begs the question, kind of what else is going on here and what should we be doing to provide either training or some support for that particular employee. So I don't know if that particularly answered your question, but unfortunately the IA process, and as pointed out early on, is particularly reactive, with the exception of seeing some trends happening where we can maybe get ahead of some things and try and curtail any future bad behavior.
Okay. And then any updates on that cultural audit?
Nothing other than to say that they're on site and they're doing their work.
Oh, you said that you were going to be looking into making sure that it was conducted, seeing that one hasn't been done, I think, since it was either 2010 or 2016, I think 2016. And then you were going to get some updates on if that was going to be conducted, and we haven't got any updates on where that stood in terms of proceeding forward with that cultural audit.
On which particular cultural audit? The one I'm doing now?
I don't think he heard you.
I don't think
so.
He said that they started it. He said they're on site right now.
They're on site doing their work now. The people that have been contracted.
Okay. And the contractors, is it an outside agency?
It is an outside contracted agency, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Leah, did you want to have any closing statements, parting shots?
Oh, you know me better than that. I am generally not great at on-the-spot speeches, but I will just say quickly, I've really I've learned a lot. It's been a really amazing 14 years working in this office, and it's been a really remarkable 3 years leading it. And I'm so lucky to have my team of Beatrice and Lindsay and Rob and Vicky, who retired last month, have just been phenomenal to work with, and I will always sing their praises to any audience very loudly. And I've been really lucky to work with the folks at EPD who I've worked with. Cindy and I have known each other for a very long time, and we work really well together, and I'm grateful for all of her meticulousness. And as you saw tonight, her attention to detail is spot on. Rick has been amazing and phenomenal and helpful always. Our IA sergeants are just, as a whole, phenomenal. Like we've worked with some really great folks up there, and I do want to thank the chief for his kind words earlier, and just agree that it's hard to leave. It's really hard to leave this community. It's hard to leave this position, and I'm excited for what's ahead. And also, it's always bittersweet to invite change into your life. So I wish everyone the best. Connect, stay in touch. I'd love to hear how things are going. I was in Eugene for 20 years, so it's not like I'm going to actually just leave. I'm sure I'll be back. So Thank you.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you,
Thank
Leah.
you.
It's been our privilege working with you. Okay, our next agenda item is reviewing the draft fiscal year 2024 annual report to City Council. The item summary on this that Holly has provided for us: biannually, the City Council meets with leadership of the Police Commission and the staff liaison to review its past work and to discuss its upcoming work plan. However, a report is submitted annually by ordinance. This agenda item is to provide the Police Commission with an opportunity to review the draft fiscal year 2024 annual report prior to it being submitted and presented to City Council on October 16th, 2024. Holly, do you have?
I'm just seeking feedback.
Okay.
The chair and the vice chair have already gotten a chance to review this, and so I just am looking for feedback. Not necessarily, wordsmithing it, but just if you see anything that, I obviously excluded or whatnot, but I really did try to write this from a very neutral stance and from your perspective, and I hope I did capture that. So I'm open to feedback that you have.
I appreciate the page you put in memory of Chair Boggs. Vice Chair?
Yeah, I'll just say, as Jensina mentioned, we have already looked at this, but both for everybody's information and because we don't do everything perfectly. If you see anything in here that you want to add or you think we did that was very important and meaningful, don't hesitate to let us know. Do you want to do a quick run through of just what the parts are?
Sure. A lot of it, of course, is our current roster. It's very, very carefully collected and curated photos over the past year to include in this. We have our tribute to Chair Boggs and the certificate that we presented to his daughter Jada. Changes in membership, we had some commissioners exit this year, and obviously a whole bunch entered. And so those have been recorded here. As far as, and we have the 2 new liaisons as well that have been appointed to us. The number of meetings that we've had during August, we take a break along with City Council. And we have the hybrid meeting method, usually here in the Cook-Holding classroom at EPD. The work plan and priorities, this was put together last summer, last May, when we put together a 2-year work plan. And so we took this to City Council. Dallas and I, at the time, we took this to City Council and said, this is what Police Commission plans to work on over the next 2 years, and received their approval. So they were prioritized in order of the weighting that was assigned to them, which was a very scientific method of a whole bunch of stickers put on the walls. But there were some things that weighed very heavily on some commissioners' minds, and so some things did make their way up to the top, such as virtual policing. We had the opportunity to review the MyPD Connect app that the chief introduced to us. Several there in the middle were considered parking lot items, the things that we will absolutely review as time allows. And there was a couple of other things to review if they become important or if we have extra time. And then, of course, we always do have time to insert, what is the term for the things that make their way in?
Emergent items.
Emergent items, yes, that. So the scope of work shows what we've actually accomplished so far, starting from when we kicked this off last summer. And so Holly has given us a column of the status, which things we have considered to be complete, which ones are in progress. The in progress are red, so they stand out for you. That will give you a little bit of a heads up of things that will be coming in future meetings. And then the policies and procedures that we have reviewed and made our recommendation to the chief. Highlights of the work that was performed, as well as presentations. So several times the chief had various people from the department come and present to Police Commission. We've also spent quite a bit of time covering the policy regarding public safety cameras. The Narcan policy was one that an example of an emerging topic. The women in policing was another emergent topic. The noteworthy presentations, we had some special guests that came to us. One of them, oh, he'll love hearing this, was my husband. He was a special guest. Is the president of the NAACP Lane County. We also received a presentation from Gray Charles with the City of Eugene's Office of Equity and Community Engagement. And we also had the opportunity to meet with Constantine Severe, who is the public safety advisor at the state level. He works directly with the governor. There's been quite a few different occasions for community outreach. Beatrice from the Independent Police Auditor's Office has been fantastic about extending an invitation for Police Commission to represent with our materials. So some of you may not have seen them. We've got brochures and we have nifty little blue whistles that are in a plastic package. And what I always tell the kids when I give them out is don't take it out of the package until you get out of the park. And I also usually tell the parents how to quickly hide them because it takes about 2.5 times of hearing it and you're really done with it. Also with the community outreach, there was at the NAACP Freedom Fund dinner. There was an award presented to Dr. Silke Booker for being a community connector. And we also had Commissioner Scott Lemons, who was at the time our Human Rights Commission liaison. And he was presenting an award to a gentleman from working with the Human Rights Commission. Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Subcommittee. Most of you have gotten way more of an update on that. And then the highlights of the work performed, some of the special guests that we've had the opportunity to speak with, some of the information that Chief Skinner and Emily McCauley have provided for us. And the conclusion, Holly's written out for us, the Police Commission takes their role seriously and mindfully in creating a climate of mutual respect and partnership between the community and the Eugene Police Department to help achieve safety, justice, and trust for all people in Eugene. Moreover, the commission appreciates the support of the city council, mayor, city manager, and the chief of police, and looks forward to addressing police policies and procedures that reflect a healthy, transparent, and safe balance between the Eugene Police Department and the community. The Police Commission looks forward to the work set forth for them as outlined in the 2024 through 2025 biennial work plan. Are there any comments or questions, recommendations, any feedback that you would like to provide? Commissioner Rady.
I have a few things.
Okay.
Some are questions, some are perhaps typos. Okay. I'm not quite clear on what work the police commission could conceivably do that would achieve freedom for all people. This is my second meeting. I have some notion of what it is the commission does, but I have a little difficulty connecting that.
What section are you referring to?
I'm starting at the beginning. Police Commission mission statement and what our goals are.
Can I take this? So, mission statement was written a long time ago. I think the main thrust of this is to ensure that freedom is not infringed upon more than any proactive measures to ensure it ourselves.
Okay. It seemed a little ambitious. On page 127, on downtown safety, Chief Skinner provided an overview of the department's safety model, which centers around safety, cleanliness, and activity. And the word cleanliness struck me as that isn't usually a police rather than sanitation function.
And it is, one of the things that we focused on with the new model of how we're running downtown, we have a civilian professional staff incident commander that not only helps with the safety, but is helping to connect the needs of the downtown core with the public works department in some timely cleanliness issues that we see, because a lack of cleanliness oftentimes is perceived as an unsafe environment.
You let them know it's clean up on aisle 3.
That is correct.
Almost got it, almost done. Yeah, okay, on page 131, under highlights of work performed, under return to duty, the last sentence reads, that's one heck of a sentence. Okay, moving into federal fiscal year 2025, the subcommittee continues to work to eventually make a recommendation to the police commission in hopes to make a final recommendation to Chief Skinner and the city council that a policy be developed to address the gaps that currently do not exist in a return to duty policy for police officers. Gaps that currently do not exist confuses me.
Typo. Do not needs to be removed.
I'm done.
Thank you for pointing that out. We
Thanks
will,
for catching it.
yeah, we will.
If you notice anything after the fact, email us. If you notice after we've already given the presentation, stop emailing us.
Chair Hawkins have a question.
Yes,
Commissioner Thorson?
Same page that Jack was just on, Commissioner Jack. And maybe I've tried reading it, and I think I know what it says, but it's a little muddy to me. Under highlights of work performed in the second paragraph, about halfway through where it has the capital word note. Eugene Police does require and/or provide as highlighted under Senate Bill 111 the following. Pay for 2 of the 1 required mental health evaluation session. So does that mean that 1 is required, but the police pay for 2, like an extra 1? What is pay for 2 of the 1 required session?
We require 1. You're gonna test my memory. We just-
I know, I was trying to remember.
I think we require
dug right
1.
into that.
We require 1 within the first 6 months, and we'll pay for that. We recommend 2. I think is what it says, is what the policy says. I'm not real sure.
And we'll pay for the second as well.
The second one is not mandated.
Right, but if the person takes it, it's covered by the department.
Yes, we would pay for that, but what we're trying to say is that in order for you to return to work, you gotta do this, and we're gonna pay for it. And if you happen to do another one, we're happy to pay for that one too, is essentially what we're trying to say.
Okay,
So
that's a little muddy.
it is a little muddy, and I don't know if it's muddy in our policy or muddy the way we're communicating this, but I have a notion that part of the commissioner's work plan in 2025 is gonna be revamp this part of the policy to suggest something different in the way of return to work and mental health check-in. So we're gonna be just changing it, potentially changing it here pretty soon, but thank you. We'll take a look and make sure that it's crystal clear in policy.
As a new commissioner, this was very helpful to read all of this stuff.
Oh, good.
Very helpful. So I don't have any other input other than great job. I don't understand the sense.
For me, it was kind of nice because it jogged my memory. Oh, yeah, we
There you
did do
go.
that. Any other questions or feedback? All right. Close that out. And we will move into closing comments. I'm gonna take the easy way out and go in order of how we are listed on the agenda. And I'm gonna go backwards because I can't go that simply. So that means Commissioner Thorson, you're up.
I was gonna say, that means I'm last. I'm grateful for the presentations that we had tonight. I found them very effective, very easy to understand, yet very concise. And so I'm grateful to the people that put in all the time. I know how much time it takes to prepare something like this, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Commissioner Rady?
Yeah, I found the reports fascinating. I mean, I really did read them all the way through, and they were quite interesting. They were good reading, and they gave me very useful information. I'm not totally convinced, and this is not in any way to disparage those people who gave us the reports tonight, that going over them verbally, and then at the end, having a few questions on, like 100 pages of data, is really the most useful way to use our time. It might be considered in future that it might be more useful to give us the report, but then have a summary of the important parts of it, and that be the report given verbally that we can then discuss. Along with any questions we have about, well, what about this one where the officer gave the Jewish hand sign? That was my favorite complaint in there, easily. That's it. Thank you so much. The reports show just real serious attention to business. Very impressive.
Commissioner Folks.
No comments, thank you.
Commissioner Price.
I just couldn't agree more with Jack and, or excuse me, Commissioner Rady and Orton. Thank you so much for all the hard work and attention to detail that has been put into just this and continuing to educate us as new commissioners as well. Highlighting on the law enforcement, mental health and wellness subcommittee. Just absolutely incredible. I think it was Emily McCauley, right? Phenomenal. Like she couldn't have given us any more information in that 1 hour of time to help navigate what we need to do in that subcommittee to help in that trajectory to support law enforcement and everything that needs to come out of that. So thank you everybody so much, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Yeah, I'll reiterate the appreciation of the attention to detail in these reports. I've seen the 2 reports before, but I'm always just, appreciative that we have organizations tracking this in our city government that gives me a lot of faith in how we run the city and the community safety activities. I do have to let you know that the next 2 meetings, I have teaching conflicts in the fall, and so I won't be here, but in advance, I'll be sending liaison reports from the CRB and then ask if anyone can come in my place as a guest to be able to do the reverse. But after the fall month, I will not be teaching on Thursday evenings, hopefully, so, yeah.
All right, we will make a note of that. Commissioner Lyman.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the conclusion of your draft report, I am happy and proud to be part of a commission that does take its role seriously and mindfully. And I am appreciative of the police departments, the chief and Julie and Holly and what they do. One noteworthy point on the Cindy's report that I didn't get to make. It's huge that 50% of the complaints come internally generated. That's just something the department should be proud of. It's a vigorous, what you see on CRB, it's a really vigorous system, the blue team. The stuff gets looked at, and we have a rigorous independent auditor, and nothing's perfect, but it's a robust system, and it's one that we should be proud of as a community. And it doesn't mean that we don't have hard work and improvement, but that 50% figure that it means they're policing themselves, and that is huge because that does not happen everywhere. So thank you.
For the new commissioners, can we get an explanation of blue team?
Sure.
Oh, all right.
You want me to come up there or?
Sure, or wherever you're comfortable. Thank you. I just asked this because it comes up in almost every meeting.
There's not a team that have, blue uniforms on or anything. So iPro is our master database where we track all the information, citizen complaints and other things we share with the auditor's office. Blue Team is a companion software that talks to iPro, and it is used for 2 primary functions. One is for when we get a complaint through the auditor's office, it comes to IA through IA Pro, and we use the Blue Team application to send it out to the field to the, usually it's the employee's immediate supervisor that gets assigned a service complaint to investigate. So we use Blue Team to send all the file information electronically to the supervisor. They investigate it. They do a closing memo. They talk to the complainant, do a closing memo. They attach it to the Blue Team record. They send it to their supervisor electronically for their review, and it gets routed back to IA for closure. The other way we use Blue Team is for individual officers or sergeants to do the data entry into the system of certain reportable incident types, like officers do their own use of force and show of force. supervisors are responsible for doing the data entry for vehicle accidents, vehicle pursuits, lost property, missed court, or any other incident type that we track, where there's quite a few things we use Blue Team for. So it's kind of it's a communication system that's attached to IA Pro that has that general purpose.
Internal complaints.
Yeah, can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
sure.
If an officer heard in the break room something that sounded like a use of force, something that should have been reported and wasn't, they could use Blue Team to enter?
They would report it to a supervisor
Who would use
one of the intake types is supervisor intake. So while citizen complaints are generally coming in directly to the auditor's office, it doesn't matter who gets the complaint. I mean, we could get a citizen complaint in the field where an officer is recognizing that a citizen is dissatisfied. They're gonna call their sergeant to the scene. The sergeant's gonna talk to the complainant. They're gonna use Blue Team to do a supervisor intake incident type and document that complaint. And that gets it into the system.
And that gets looked at, and if it's the auditor's opinion that it's more than just what the
Yes.
supervisor thought, then that's how it can escalate.
Absolutely. The supervisors generally have an idea of if it's going to be likely classified as serious misconduct versus a service complaint. The officer was rude to me or something lower level. They generally have an idea, but if they don't have the authority to classify it, they put it in and they route it into the system. We send it over to the auditor. They get to look at it. They get to ask for perhaps more information to better understand what happened, like the body worn video if it's not already attached, that kind of thing. And then they classify it. If they feel like the supervisor is done, for example, if they feel like it wasn't a policy violation, and the complaint was received, it wasn't a policy violation, and the supervisor's assessment was complete and thorough, and they looped back with the reporting party already that they already answered, this was not problematic behavior, then likely it will be just closed out. The auditor can say, no, we want the supervisor to contact the complainant and address these issues. So the auditor has visibility to every complaint regardless how it comes in and who does the intake. But they are doing the lion's share of the intake of citizen complaints, but they can come in. Doesn't matter how we get it. We could get a letter addressed to the chief and that gets in that way.
Can the employees report anonymously for the internal complaints?
The employees who want to report anonymously are generally going to the auditor's office to do that. That's my experience. I don't know if Leah's still on, but that's my experience. Usually, if they're reporting to a supervisor, it's within the record that's where the incident or they're our witness. So we're probably gonna need to talk to them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Commissioner Parham.
I have no comments at this time.
Councilor Ye,
No comments, thank you, Chair.
Dr. Booker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to make note, I know Commissioner Lehman said it was a good thing that the internal complaints was a positive thing with the internal complaints, but it's also going to be looked at as a negative complaint or as a negative thing too. I'd like to make note that we remember what prompted the request for a cultural audit, and that was the lawsuit and the complaint by a female officer of the letter that we received. I think it was sent to our current chair right now, from the female officer and her complaint about how she felt, which prompted us to start the request for a cultural audit. So we should not lose sight of that as to why we started the request for a cultural audit to begin with, and that was for the treatment of female officers within EPD, amongst other things, and lack of diversity within the police force. But I would like to ask, I don't know if this is the right time to ask or we should wait, but I would like to ask that the outside agency be invited to our next police commission to basically explain what the cultural audit is, so everybody in our community is aware of what a cultural audit is and the purpose of it, and the process. I think that's very beneficial information to the community at large, especially the Black community, to understand what a cultural audit is and why it was requested in the first place. But also for that outside agency to get to know their Eugene police commissioners and why we would like to meet with them and why that request was stated. But that would be my ask. And
Mr. Shivers. Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Booker.
Other than that, it was a great meeting. I love the annual report that we put together. Thank you so much for including my dear friend and my brother Dallas Boggs and his daughter in the report. He was a very powerful piece to this community on both sides of the aisle. He's deeply missed, and I'm so glad that was included into the annual report. And I appreciate IA for coming to the meeting to explain their report that we received. That's very beneficial, opened up a lot of questions and dialogue, information that we needed to discuss, especially on a public forum. And I look forward to hashing out our agenda and our plan, our work plan that we've come up with. So thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of direct feedback about the cultural audit. It won't be the next meeting. We've got meetings planned out for a few months now, and I would hate to influence a work in progress. However, they will give us a report, and we can discuss it in an executive meeting about potentially having somebody actually come in to give that report to us. I don't know if it'll be possible. It's not in the scope of work, I don't think. So it'll require a couple of discussions, but thank you for the feedback. The second piece was for the mental health and wellness subcommittee. I'm really eager to see the work that you will be coming out with. I've heard an idea floated about doing a yearly mental health screening the same way people get physicals at the doctor, I think was the metaphor used with me. So I'm hoping that you guys take a look at that and come to the wider commission with some ideas. And yeah, thanks for doing the work, and I'm eager to see it. Thank you.
That would come from our new chair. Oh, and congratulations to the new chair of the subcommittee, Commissioner Parle.
Yes. All right.
Thank you. Commissioner Booker.
And I have no closing comments this evening. Meeting adjourned 23 minutes early, let the record state.
Yeah, Commissioner Shivers, I want to know what the